You're listening to the Open Books Podcast.
Your next chapter starts now.
Is it love, 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 love that I'm feeling? Is it love, 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 love that I'm feeling? Is she the one?
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Open Books Podcast. We are back today with a book analysis for We Used to Live Here.
Book analyses. Does anybody say it like that?
I'm sure.
An analyses.
An analysi.
The plural version. An analysi.
An analysi.
We Used to Live Here by Marcus. I still have not.
I don't know how to say his last name. I keep saying Kiewler.
Kiewler?
I think that's actually... Someone did say it.
Kiewler. Marcus Kilewer.
And I keep saying like Cole.
Yeah.
K-L.
I keep saying Kiewler. Either way.
Tila Tequila.
Tila Tequila, Marcus Kilewer. It is a psychological thriller that we thoroughly enjoyed. And I'm definitely excited to kind of break it down.
I've got a really great feeling about us teaming up. How can I jump in and help?
Is that Sage?
Yeah, it was an accident.
I've never heard ChatGPT speak.
Hi there. I just want to share how thrilled I am to work with you, and I can't wait to get started. So what's the game plan?
I just got chills.
That was super bizarre.
It just like went off.
I don't really like the guy's voice there.
Hey there.
Okay, so we're here to talk about We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kilewer. We're sorry to this man, but we know who you are. You just have a very difficult last name to say. But we are super excited to break down this book, read the summary, talk about really the crazy concepts
that were happening.
Yeah, I remember reading this and I was like, where is this going? I really liked it.
I loved it.
Yeah.
But there were times where I was like, I would text you and I'm like, I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
Like I knew what was happening. I'm like, okay, weird shit's happening in this house. We've got a weird little entity. Mm-hmm. But what is it?
What is it
though?
And
like,
I guess we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
I do have a question. Did the book scare you at all?
Not really.
Me either. It had the potential to be scary.
Yes, but it wasn't, to me, it wasn't a scary book. It was creepy.
It was creepy.
Creepy.
And it was thrilling.
Yes.
So I am still on the lookout for a scary book. This was close. Mm-hmm. I loved it, but I wouldn't necessarily call it like a horror. I would definitely think more psychological thriller.
Yeah.
Okay, so shall we just jump right in?
Let's do it.
So, We Used to Live Here was a chilling psychological thriller that explores the unsettling feeling of returning to a place filled with memories that have long since faded. So, here is the summary of the book for those of you that may have not read it, but you just want to hear a fun story, or if you read it and you need a little refresher like us. So, We Used to Live Here is a suspenseful psychological horror that follows Charlie and Eve, a young queer couple who buy and flip houses. The story begins with them purchasing an old, beautiful house in a seemingly perfect neighborhood for a surprisingly low price. Excited by their find, they start to work on the property, but their luck soon takes a dark turn. One day, while busy with renovations, they hear a knock at the door. A man, accompanied by his wife and 2 children, stands on their doorstep. But it's actually just Eve home. Charlie is currently out of the house. So Eve is by herself. This man, his name is Thomas. He explains that he used to live in the house years ago, and he asks Eve if it would be all right to show his kids around for old time's sake. Eve, being kind and eager to please, agrees and lets the family in despite feeling a hint of discomfort. This moment marks the beginning of a disturbing series of events. It feels important to mention that Eve is an extreme people pleaser. She suffers daily with that painful need to avoid conflict and to ensure everyone around her is happy. She often makes choices in favor of what other people want instead of herself, and her people-pleasing tendencies seem to suffocate her at times. So this kind of leads us into the story. The family enters the house and things quickly start to go awry. The atmosphere in the house very noticeably shifts, and an unsettling occurrence begins to unfold quickly. It starts with small things like strange noises, cold drafts, the unnerving feeling of being watched, but soon the situation escalates. The family definitely overstays their welcome, ignoring Eve's hints that it might be time to leave. Eve becomes increasingly uneasy as they wander through the house, acting almost as if they still own it. The story takes a darker turn when the family's youngest child suddenly goes missing within the house just as they were about to finally leave. The couple, along with the family, searches frantically, but the child seems to have vanished into thin air. Simultaneously, a ghostly presence starts manifesting in the basement, leaving Eve to question what's real and what might be a product of her growing paranoia. Things spiral further out of control when Charlie also mysteriously vanishes. So Charlie and Eve are partners, and Charlie ends up coming back to the house while the family is there. The family goes to leave, and there's like a crazy blizzard or something, and they end up coming back to stay the night. So in the middle of the night, Thomas, they find him like being weird in the street.
Weird as fuck.
Like weird as fuck, chilling in the street. They bring Thomas back inside. He like he's so sorry. He doesn't know what he was doing. Anyway, they end up going back to sleep, and Eve thinks she sees like a ghost in the basement. She wakes up Charlie. Charlie, of course, doesn't believe her. She's like, honey, just go back to sleep. Like, I'll look at it in the morning. Like,
God, she was the worst sometimes.
She was. And then so Eve wakes up and Charlie's gone. She's nowhere to be found. So now Eve is alone again in the house with this like freak of a family who never left. So anyway, now she's alone with the family, and she struggles to maintain her grip on reality as she also deals with the bizarre behavior of the family, who again show no intention of leaving even though they say they are. As the story reaches its climax, Eve's sense of reality becomes fragmented. She's left alone in the house after the sudden disappearance of Charlie and the mysterious vanishing of the youngest child. Eve begins to unravel the truth about the house's dark history throughout this time. She discovers old documents and photographs that reveal unsettling details about the previous owners and the house's past. It becomes clear that the house has a troubling history involving disappearances and mysterious deaths, suggesting that the supernatural disturbances might be deeply rooted in its history. She learns that the man of the family that showed up, Thomas, has his own dark family history that includes one of his old family members slowly going crazy, seeing things, and believing that Thomas wasn't really supposed to be in her family. She ended up stabbing Thomas when he was a kid and attempted to kill him at one point, believing that he was actually an evil force and not who he says he was. So the family still stays despite her attempts to again get rid of them. They continue to linger as if they're bound to the house. Their presence becomes intrusive and hostile, adding to Eve's mounting anxiety. She ends up exploring the basement one more time thoroughly, and here she encounters that ghostly presence that's been haunting her. The basement reveals itself almost as an epicenter of the house's supernatural activity. And Eve discovers a hidden room behind a false wall. Inside, she finds disturbing evidence of possible cult practices and rituals that were performed by previous inhabitants, meant to trap and possibly manipulate spirits. In a shocking revelation, Eve learns that the family who visited her is not merely a group of random strangers, but in her opinion might be connected to the house's dark past. They are descendants of the original owners who had performed these rituals to ensure their immortality and to control the spirits within the house. Their visit was part of an elaborate scheme to lure someone into the house, possibly Eve, thereby enabling them to maintain their hold over the house. As Eve confronts the family, she's faced with the terrifying choice to either escape the house and confront the malevolent forces within it. The story builds as Eve fights to break free from the house's grasp, and she realizes that Charlie's disappearance is most likely linked to the family's attempt to either take over her body or spirit and continue their control over the house. Charlie ends up coming back, though, and Eve convinces her to leave the house right away. So Charlie and Eve go to a hotel, but very soon Eve realizes that the Charlie that's with her is not her real Charlie, because the real Charlie calls her on her phone that night and tells her do not trust the Charlie that she's with because she's a fraud. She urges Eve to never go back.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
How did real Eve know about fraudulent Eve?
Because she gets the phone call from... Wait, how did real Eve know about fraudulent Eve?
Yeah, like how did she know to tell her?
You mean real Charlie?
Yes. Sorry.
I don't think we ever found out, because real Charlie calls Eve and she's like, that person that's with you is not me, but don't come back to the house.
Right. I remember that. I'm just sitting here trying to think. I'm like,
well, after that phone call, we never heard from real Charlie ever again.
Okay.
So we don't know how she knew. Or I think she's trapped in the house. Or was he? That's the question of the whole book. You know? That's the question. Because then we get to this other, like, big either plot twist that could mean that Eve is imagining all of this.
All of it, yeah.
And Eve is actually mentally ill. Or all of it is true and Eve really is being snubbed. So here's what happens. Eve gets a phone call from Charlie saying that the Charlie she's with at the hotel is not real, tells her not to trust her, and urges Eve to never go back to the house, but Eve cannot help herself. She feels a need to save Charlie, so she goes back to the house one more time and is met with a really bizarre scene. So the family, Thomas the father, suddenly acts like he owns the house. The family's having dinner, and they talk to Eve as if she's actually Thomas's sister. They start calling her Emma. Eve is frustrated, screaming at the family, demanding that her name is Eve, and she wants to know where Charlie is. The family again treats Eve like she's some deranged family member of theirs. They claim that Eve is the sister of Thomas, who has been living with the family for several years after her breakup with her ex-partner, quote-unquote, Charlotte. And it is clear that Thomas's wife has had enough of quote-unquote Emma. In a fit of rage, Eve ends up killing his wife, and Thomas freaks out, crying over his wife's body and begging Emma to tell him why she would do such a violent thing to her family that is giving her so much. Eve is then arrested and taken into a mental facility where she begs the authorities to believe her that her name is actually Eve and not Emma, but nobody does. Every story she tells about the life she always knew is no longer real in this current reality. Her parents are not really her parents. The Charlie she knew doesn't exist. Now she's just Emma, a person that she's never identified as she's locked up in this mental institution for killing her supposed sister-in-law. She's learned to live with this new reality, but she never really accepts it. She kind of just fakes it to stay in good graces. She knows that something terrible has happened to her Charlie, and she knows that she's really Eve. As the book ends, Thomas comes to visit Eve. He plays into the story that she's his mentally ill sister. But at the end of the visit, he slips Eve a necklace that confirms everything for Eve, because that necklace belonged to her Charlie. So Eve is left again feeling like her life was stolen by Thomas, his family, and that house, but she doesn't know how or why. And then that's how it ends. So, like you said, was Eve mentally ill, or was Eve, was she mentally ill and actually Emma? Or
Right.
was the house some kind of hotspot for demonic behavior? I don't know.
There were times where I felt both, not at the same time. I don't know. I guess that's the whole purpose of the book, is to get you questioning that.
And it makes me wonder if they'll have a second, because it definitely left room for a second, the way the book ended. I remember there was actually a group of people who believe Eve, and they were on Reddit, Reddit.
Yes,
sleuths.
going hard.
Yeah, in support of Eve. And they were we believe that there are cults out there, or rituals, or some type of groups that are ancient, and they kind of do this, steal souls and whatever, or I don't know, maybe this house was a hot spot for that. I don't know.
No, I agree with that, because I like that theory more than the mental illness
I do too.
trope.
Agreed.
So let's go ahead and jump into some of our book club questions. Did you find any of the characters in this book relatable?
Eve. Her
100%.
people pleasing.
100%. I would feel bad if I didn't let the family into the house.
Me too.
And then be pissed about it that they wouldn't leave.
Yeah, and the whole time her inner monologue is oh my God, please leave my house. Please take the hint. But she just couldn't find it within herself to say, get out of this house.
Yes.
Until the end, when she was pissed. But that's usually what it is for people pleasers. It takes a lot until they're pushed to the very farthest edge of the world.
And then people are shocked.
Yeah, they're oh my God.
Oh my God, how could you?
You're taking up for yourself?
You're taking up for yourself?
Yeah, I completely related to Eve. I definitely felt frustrated by Eve because I wanted her to take up for herself, but it made me kind of reflect on myself, because I know there's been times that friends of mine or my mom has been frustrated with me for being so much of a people pleaser, or
Yeah.
I don't know. It just depends on certain situations. So there are situations where I feel immediately I will take off for myself and I'll say what I want to say, but there's so many times that I just will kind of comply. I think we've both gotten better at it, though.
We have gotten a lot better at it. What were your first impressions of the house in the story, and did that change as the plot unfolded?
Well, in the beginning of the story, I had a feeling that the house was going to kind of mean something, because it was just the perfect trope of a house. It was this
Right.
old, beat up, abandoned
We used
house.
to live here.
Yeah, they were going to come. I loved where it went though with like I really like the theory that the house is an epicenter of some type of supernatural like ancient activity.
The ancient part is
Like-
what makes it different.
Me too. Like I would like to believe that Thomas is like 800 years old.
How cool would that be?
Yeah.
Almost like a second book, but the
Thomas's
prequel.
like history, the house's
Yes.
history. Yeah, because and then in Thomas's history, the family member was basically went through the same thing Eve did. Like she was realizing that Thomas was not her real, I don't remember, maybe it was brother
Yeah.
or it was her brother maybe.
Yep.
She was like writing in her journal like don't listen to Thomas, he's not real. And like maybe he was some kind of like 800-year-old, some type of witch, demon, exactly. And like the point of him in the house is to kind of just like trap people. Lie,
Soul
manipulate.
collector.
Yeah, soul collector. And just like to manipulate, change them, warp their realities.
Yeah, as the story unfolded, I definitely was like, I want more
Me too.
about the house. And my first like impression of the house though is it just sounded so cool. Like I love a whole like flip the house, renovate the house type of thing. Mm-hmm. But I like that it took a
Darker turn.
paranormal turn.
Yeah, I also love old house tropes. Like they're very interesting.
Definitely.
Anything with an old creepy house, count me in.
How did the relationships between the characters change over the course of the book? And did you appreciate the change in the relationships?
I'm trying to think like between Eve and Charlie. First of all, I thought that Charlie was infuriating sometimes because she definitely was dismissive of Eve's like, I don't know.
That always annoys me with books. I'm like, just believe your partner.
And
Why
the
are
partner's always right.
the partner's always right. But I never like if Josh were to tell me like, hey, I think the house might be haunted. I think someone's in the basement right now. I would not be like, go back to sleep.
Babe, I'm tired.
You're tired. You're just imagining things.
Yeah.
I'd be like, let's go fucking check.
Yeah. No, that part was infuriating me when she's like, there's someone in the basement. I just saw them.
I saw them.
Imagine like not getting up, being like, oh, it's fine.
I'm tired.
Which that could also play into maybe Eve was mentally unstable and maybe Charlie knew that and this was like
Like an
a
episode?
an episode. Which I still would prefer to believe the other half of the story. Plus, I think that ending of the book where you get Charlie's necklace.
Right.
That's the real
like
Charlie.
The full circle.
I felt like that was ancient Thomas coming in to be evil. But any more relationships that changed, I don't
it's
really.
almost like a Thomas and Eve.
Thomas and Eve turned to Thomas and Emma. That was really bizarre and really interesting to me. Like, I thought that was such a cool trope. Like, when she goes back to the house, I pictured the whole thing like a movie in my head of her going back to the house of this creepy ass family that's like, oh, hey, Emma. Like, acting
This
like
would make such a good movie.
such a good movie. Like, I picture them just being like, hey. And she's just like frustrated, screaming, like, I'm not Emma. And they're like, oh, here Emma goes
Here
again.
she goes.
Like, that frustration I felt through the book, which I think would be really cool to see. Yeah, I thought that change in relationship was fascinating.
Absolutely. So this will be our last question for our analysis. Was there a moment that you found the most eerie or intense?
The basement moments for me those were the moments that I got like a little scared because they were just like creepy old lady in the basement. Like, that's fucking scary.
And that is scary.
Yeah.
That's jump scare.
Yeah.
That's like, it's completely dark and then she just like pops out. I think for me, it was definitely when Thomas was having one of those like weird in the street.
Oh my God, that
moments.
was freaky. That was freaky. And just the switch up with Thomas, like there was a couple things that make me believe our theory that it actually is Thomas is some kind of like ancient evil.
Yeah.
Because another part was where Eve had just killed his wife. He's like putting on that whole show. Why would you do this? Like, we're your family. And then he says like one little comment to her. I think he calls her Eve, like secretly. Do you remember that? So he's like, Emma, why would you do this? And then he's like, you know what you did, Eve.
Yes.
That gave me chills.
See, I think our theory is right then.
I do too. And I would love to see more of this book. I would love to read
too.
more. And that's the only critique I had was like, I just needed more.
For sure. Well, in one of the groups that we're in on Facebook, someone posted that this was going to be a series or a movie or something. I tagged you in it. Where is it?
And it's
I haven't seen
September 10th.
of 2024.
Right,
Maybe
that's
it meant
past.
25.
Maybe.
I don't know. We need to dig deeper into that. But I do have some reviews, and then of course our 1-star, 3-star, 5 stars from Goodreads. So this is one of our listeners. Loved it. My favorite book of the year. And I read 3 to 4 books a week. Oh my gosh.
Wow. Amazing. Kudos to you.
What did you just say?
I meant to say kudos to you. And I said kudos.
Kudos to you. Love the little breadcrumbs throughout. Scary part for me was related to the questioning your reality. It also, that's scary in real life. Like, is this really happening? Or
God, that I can imagine that scare. I've never really experienced that, but that's fucking terrifying.
I've only ever felt that when I've waken up from like a wild ass dream. Like, was that real or did I dream that?
Yes. And I do feel that I have like really crazy dreams all the time. Do you?
Yes.
Yeah. And I have that feeling often waking up like,
or do you ever go about your day and you're like, have a memory and you're like, did that actually happen to me? Did I make that up? Did I dream it?
Yeah.
Is what you think or perceive true? Can you trust yourself? What if you think you can, but others question you? I do think you need at least a small base of knowledge about some theories to really get this one. I don't want to spoil anything by pointing out what theories, but if you loved it, you probably already know. Also, I love the parts that were from knowledge of reoccurring dream themes. Overall, thought it was absolutely brilliant. I still want to learn Morse code.
Wait, that gave me an idea for another mini episode is just dreams in general. That would be really interesting if we both deep dive into it, come with some like information that we research.
I also have a really good book on that.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay. Love that.
Okay. So here are some reviews for you. Here is a 1 star. Again, these are from Goodreads. This book really took me by surprise how quickly it went from potential, conspiracy, and then the last 20%, which made no sense to me at all. To be fair, I honestly never connected to the main character, Eve, and found her being made out to be an unreliable narrator, which is a trope I rarely like to begin with some standout exceptions. The first few chapters had given me hope, and some of the note additions were an interesting sideline to keep you going. However, the surreal fever dream feeling intensified, and I couldn't connect or care about anything at that point. I was going to go with 2 stars, but the last 20% was so random, made things more confusing. I didn't think that was possible. And when you don't care about the characters to begin with, there was nothing for me to look back on and appreciate. I do normally enjoy ambiguous endings, but when combined with these other elements and no clue as to what is really going on to ponder, I just couldn't have cared less at this point. Every reading experience is different, and if you like stories that constantly question the reality of, well, everything, you will likely have a much better reading experience than I did with this one.
I understand those frustrations.
Yeah.
But I loved the last 20%. I thought they were so interesting. I remember the ending being like, "Ooh, this is so exciting."
I know, and I feel like that's what really...
Yeah.
Sometimes, there are times when I like a book that has me guessing after the fact. Like, I do want to keep thinking about it, as opposed to it being, like, tied up in a bow. I like that this one kept me thinking.
Me too. It kept me thinking in a way that I wasn't, like, angry about. Like, I'm more hopeful for a sequel.
Yeah.
And I didn't really find Eve to be an unreliable narrator because for a lot of the first half of the book, I felt like she was being set up. Like, I was like, I trusted her. I believe that Thomas was the one making her lose her sense of reality.
Right.
So, I don't know.
And that was the point of his character.
Yeah, that's what I think, too.
Okay. 3.5 stars. And it starts at a 4 and it ends at a 3. The strongest parts of the social horror of the build-up, a thing I love and wish we saw more of, the discomfort of the violation of social rules or the inability to violate social rules, is such a great way to build tension and hint at some unknown. As it gets closer to the climax, it becomes more cosmic and more chaotic. Sometimes that kind of chaos is great, but sometimes it just feels like less than the sum of its parts. But the eeriness of the first half was so effective, I felt more creeped out by this book than it made sense.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair review. I also want to mention the frustration of the family not understanding the social cues. That drives me crazy. Like, when they just wouldn't leave.
Yes.
What do you do? That's what also makes me think they were like, or at least Thomas was some type of entity, because, like, get out. No one just sleeps at the stranger's house. Like, you don't just go knocking on their door, hey, this is my childhood home, and then never leave. Like,
right.
That's fucking weird.
Okay, 5 star. what did I just read? This is probably my favorite book of 2024. Definitely my favorite horror novel. It's so interesting that so many people are calling it horror.
Yeah.
Because I just didn't land on horror. Although it had a very heavy psychological thriller aspect to it as well, which added an overwhelming sense of dread throughout and had me chewing on my poor nails until the last sentence, I can't give this one any less than an amazing 5 stars. It's a no-brainer. I've recently discovered that this will be adapted into a Netflix film, which I couldn't be more excited about. If readers are craving an incredibly clever novel that they cannot put down and stay up reading late into the night with an escalating sense of unease, this is the novel for them.
I identify with this
I
rating.
think that rating is where we both fall.
Yeah, because we always talk about like the way books make us feel. This one, like I felt the same way. I was just excited reading it. Like I was just like, oh my God, what's going to happen?
It gave us that zest again.
Yeah, yeah. Here's some like little key themes or elements that I definitely found were interesting. So, home and identity. The novel explores the concept of home as both a physical place and a repository of memories where past and present collide, which is an interesting way to look at like a home.
Yeah.
Do you have connections to homes like that, like to houses? I don't think I do. You do? Okay.
So the house that I grew up in until like 5th grade, until we moved to the house that my parents live in now, I have dreams about this house all the time.
Really?
I can't, again, with the dreams, but I've had dreams that like I was a little kid living there again. Had dreams that like I moved in there as an adult and the house looks like it did before Katrina. It's very bizarre. But I have a reoccurring dream with the house. But I am at different ages.
That's crazy. And then like your brain just digs deep into that and recreates it.
So you say in past and present, it's kind of like crazy because like I've had dreams where I've lived in that house as an adult, like Josh and I together.
Wow, that's so interesting. Yeah, I don't have that with places. I have it with things and like memories and different people, but not with places. That's really interesting. Supernatural and psychological horror. So I guess the book is two things can be true: horror and psychological thriller. The genre is in the eye of the beholder.
Very true. See, for me, this would be like more paranormal for me.
Yeah, than horror.
Horror is not paranormal.
No.
Like ghosty apparitions.
Isolation. Eve's increasing sense of isolation and helplessness intensifies the suspense. Definitely felt that. Like Eve's just like paranoia was making my heart race throughout the whole novel.
Okay, so we have our next on the shelf, which, as you know, this is the next book that we're going to be reading, and we encourage you to read along with us, engage, and send us your thoughts. This one is The Last One by Will Dean. When Kaz steps on board the exclusive cruise liner RMS Atlantica, it's the start of a vacation of a lifetime with her new love, Pete. On their first night, they explore the ship, they eat, they dance, they make friends, but when Kaz wakes the next morning, Pete is missing. And when she walks out onto the corridor, all the cabin doors are open. To her horror, she soon realizes that the ship is completely empty. No passengers, no crew, nobody but her. The Atlantica is steaming into the mid-Atlantic, and Kaz is the only person on board. But that's just the beginning of the terrifying journey she finds herself trapped on in this white-knuckled mystery.
Can't wait. It sounds amazing.
Yeah, I've started it, and it definitely has my attention. So,
are you doing Kindle?
Kindle, yes,
Okay.
I'm reading it.
I think I'm going to read this one too. I'm so stuck on audiobooks right now. I want to challenge myself to do Kindle.
I will say, so far, the character development is fantastic.
This is a little bit different. It's still thriller, but it's like a different atmosphere than what we're used to.
Y'all, the setting on a cruise ship.
Yeah.
First of all, and
Interesting.
like being in the middle of the ocean
scary.
is freaky enough.
I have like a fascination with cruise ship horror stories as well. Like I've listened to like several podcasts about things that have gone wrong on cruise ships. I find them to be very interesting. And all right, well, thank y'all so much for listening. Please read along, follow along with us at Open Books Podcast. Leave us a rate and review because it helps us out so much.
It does.
Love y'all.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.